Hi there, I'm Danny Henderson. Welcome back to my beautiful Disclosure channel. My guest today is the one and only Bev Rhodes. Hello, Beverly Rhodes.
Hi, Danny. How are you? Nice to see you again.
Always good to see you, even though we do talk on the darkest, heinous, most sometimes evil subjects unimaginable to humanity. Other than that, Beverly Rhodes, it's great to see you. Our last conversation we had last year, we touched on the vampires and we touched on what you, as a little girl who was unfortunately thrust into a very dark world of
Mm.
satanic harm, red, well, blood drinking. Not you, but as a child, you were used as a decoy. You were used to help in the assistance of a person who chooses to become a vampire, who
Hmm.
has to eat no food and has to do the transition, as you called it, over, which is agony for a wannabe vampire. And you just described the house, the silence of the house, the smells, and you went into great detail. Could you give us just a brief synopsis? I know I just did, but a little more, and then we can point people to our conversation from last week before we tackle other subjects. And guys, everyone, graphic warning, you're going to hear stuff that is not for children. Beverly.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny. Yep, it's definitely not for children. But I think that as you said, rightly said, that the facilities that they those leaders, the masters that create the vampire legions, they create these legions over a period of a year, sometimes in some cases even longer. And Danny, the smell is correct. It is the most putrid smell. You got to make sure that before you go in that you put your camphor cream or some Vicks on your nose and that so that you smell that, because sometimes you want to retch, you really want to hurl. But it's one of those, if I remember it correctly, is going into the property. It's so dark that you leave the door open a little bit longer just so that you've got a bit of that little tiny sliver of light coming in. And they are at a point where they're quite feral sometimes. And you've got to, well, I never did. I mean, I used to take the lunchbox and go through to the kitchen because there's no food, no human food there. I used to take the lunchbox into the kitchen, and my handler would say to them, wait, like you would to if you're training a dog or a puppy, and you'd say, wait, same thing. You'd get them to wait before they could pounce for their food, because they only get a certain amount of volunteers that will give of their life force. And these are people, they're not taken, they're not people that are moved in any way. They are people that actually actively agree to be fed on.
And what you mean by that, just to break it down for the lay people, is
Mm.
that the volunteers are generally women who offer their necks and access for the vampire that wants to be a vampire, to drink their essence, to drink their blood. But
Yes.
ask you a question. Oh, also, do you know what we should be on? Remember last week, the
Mm.
whole video we made was frozen, and my bloody face was on the screen the whole time. Terrible. It was like
Oh dear.
frozen in place, but we couldn't tell because while we were recording,
It looked fine.
you
Yeah.
were on screen the whole time, looking beautiful and glamorous. And when it went out, I was like, oh my God. So anyway, so let's just keep each other on screen because I don't want that happening again. But oh damn it, what was I going to say to you? Okay, so I wanted to ask you about the fact that the 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 vampire, the smell, is it? I mean, and they're feeding, you'll tell us in a minute, like how often they feed on blood, but they stop eating food. Is there some kind of die-off on their organs that also creates that horrific smell? Like, what is the smell?
I think that the smell is definitely them. It's definitely them. They are just like, wow. And they've got different levels of vamps that are transitioning. So you'll also have those that are partially the way through, and then you'll have those that are nearly finished that are completely different. And I must say, those that are nearly finished when you see them, they've got amazing skin. They're all plumped up. You know, when they've had their food, they plump up and they look a lot better. It's a bit like if you can imagine a leech, when a leech is needs to be given a feed that gets all sort of, claw-like and wrinkly and that. But once the leech has been given its food, it's now all nice and shiny and lovely. And that's pretty much the same way. And I think that part of the change, they do a lot of vomiting, and they do have a lot of sort of bodily fluids that pass through them. And they're not great at cleaning up after themselves. You have to kind of, walk around things. And then sometimes you'll have one or two of them that didn't quite make it for whatever the reason is. I'm not sure why they don't make it, but they don't make it, and then they expire. So that's got to be
Right.
moved.
I mean, they don't make it to the bathroom and then don't clean up because
They
now,
don't do that either. They don't make it to the bathroom and they don't clean up.
so they don't go to the bathroom. Like, I know it's so gross, but
They do. They do go to the bathroom, but they go as it gets closer and closer and closer, it gets less and less and less because they expel everything top and bottom so that the more and more that they become used to just a liquid diet because they don't eat anything. They don't actually I'd never seen them eat anything, and I wouldn't have shared my sandwiches with them anyway.
oh my God. Oh my God, it's so gross. It's interesting because before we did our conversation last week on the vampires, I felt compelled to watch The Diary of the Vampires with Cruz and Pitt, who pretty much
Oh,
live today like they do in that movie.
yeah,
And the little girl, she's very intense. I forget her name. What an actress. Just a little
very clever. Mm.
very, very clever little girl. Now an adult, because it's like a 20-year-old film. And some of the areas that you took us into are definitely reflected in that film. But they claim that they are the undead and that they are indestructible. There was a point where Tom Cruise becomes a cropper and he's like basically lacerated into two pieces by Brad Pitt, then thrown into a New Orleans swamp and then eaten by an alligator. But apparently, when Cruz's body was inside the alligator's blood merged with his, and he was able to. I mean, it's also Hollywood, but there's so many kind of fascinating, elements to all of this, like what's real and what isn't.
Mm.
But in terms of you knowing about these people turning into full vampires that do nothing but exist on blood and then get taken to New Orleans and have to survive, as you mentioned. But what is their lifespan? Is their lifespan enhanced? Would they live longer?
I think they do live longer. I mean, I could never, the ones that were in the lounge, which is the feeding area, I would walk past them, and I mean, when you're a youngster, you look at someone that's 30, you think is old anyway. But they they never looked any different to me after being doing the same job as a caretaker for so long. They never changed. They looked the same. So I think you wouldn't really know looking at them how old they actually are, how many years they've walked here, because as long as they're plumped up and they get a good feed, it'll just plump up the cells, it'll plump up, the skin, it'll plump up what it needs to do. It will keep everything going. So I would imagine they could potentially live for hundreds of years, and nobody would know that they're hundreds and hundreds of years old. They wouldn't.
Only that they smell like the Walking Dead. But that's
That's the key.
another way.
Hmm.
All right, let's move on to another area of your experiences. And because you were in such a violent household,
Mm.
let's say, and um, I mean, you can't really call him a dad, the monster that was abusing you and sharing you with his Masonic friends. Of course, not all Freemasons are evil. We're
Yeah.
not saying that, and I have never said that. But some are definitely filthy, dirty pedos that need to be banged up in prison for a very long time. And that's a fact.
Mm.
And those of you that cover up for them, shame on you. You, as a child, because of all the horror and the terror occurring, will naturally attract darkness. I know that because I attracted darkness. I had many demons around me growing up, which is why I've got so much experience with them. So please share with us your first interactions with the darkness.
And that's really good, you what you're saying about attracting the darkness, because they just seem to know. They can just see, they can sense, and they hone into you because they know this is one that we want to become one of us, and they try their damnedest and they don't always get it right. My very, very first memory is of me being in my bedroom and in the little single bed, and there was something that had stood by the side of the cupboard. And I could see that at first it was just this darkness, and I thought, and I sat up and I looked at it, and I thought, no, that's not the cupboard. There is something there. And I screamed out, and my handler, he came in and he said, "Oh, what's wrong with you now?" And I said, "Look, what's that? What's that? What's that?" And he just looked at it, and he just sort of went like that, as if to say, you know, "Oh, go and just beetle off. Don't sit there." And this went on for about a week or so. By the time the next week came, it had decided that it was going to show itself. And this is when I realized there was the lower levels, there were the higher levels, the medium levels, etc. This one was not anything fancy. It was one of the lower levels, one of the irritating ones that are there for irritation factor and frustration more than anything else. But I think that because of where I was and who I was with and what I was being trained in, I think it was there to make sure that I was going to be theirs, if you know what I mean. And that's how it kept showing itself. And it looked very bat-like, and it had this sort of like leathery, funny leathery skin, like a really a very bad fake handbag, like a plasticky, fakey leather, funny thing. But also, you could smell it before you could see it. Another one, and it smelled like you'd taken like loads of matches, and that you sort of discharged all these matches in your room, and that's what it smelled like. And I gave up saying, "Oh, there's something in my room." I stopped saying that because, I would get in, I'd probably get a backhander. And after about the fourth backhander, I thought, maybe just shut up. Shut up, Rhodes. Don't say anything. Just leave it. And that was it. And that's where, and it would actually taunt me. It would stand there, then it would walk towards the bed, then it would go back again, then it would walk towards the bed. And eventually, the only way that I could, it sounds really stupid, but what I did is I put myself underneath the sheets. And yes, in those days, there weren't duvets, it was sheets and an eiderdown. Go underneath the sheets and the eiderdown, and I'd sit underneath there and I'd say, I'd be praying, "Please go away, please go away, please go away." And then after I got so hot underneath the eiderdown and the sheets and everything, I was like, "I'm going to have a look out and look out to see whether it had gone." And then eventually it had gone, and I could settle down to sleep. But this went on for ages and ages and ages. It just would not stop. It really wouldn't. That was my first experience with them.
When the darkness, demons, different layers and levels of demons, entities, earthbounds are attracted to little children,
Mm.
it's primarily because the children are so petrified and they're letting off the chemicals, the pheromones, the hormones, the light, and it just pulls in. And we're praying and we're begging for our lives. I say us, like you and I and other children who've gone
Mm.
through horrors that we have. And we don't realize that we're calling in the dark. But we're just so desperate, we'll call out to anything. The house, as I've told you, that I grew up in was extremely haunted. But it was built on well, not even burial ground, it was battleground. So many soldiers had
Mm.
lost their lives over generations, over centuries. And it just was such a draw for violence and drugs and alcohol and people that beat the shit out of their kids and their wives. And it was in the 70s. And yeah, anyway, so that was my house. And because I was born seeing, clairvoyant, and had already connected with extraterrestrials before the demons and the angels and ETs before the demons, when they started coming and trying to attach. Um, that was the most frightening part. It was scarier than meeting the beautiful annex, let's say extraterrestrial or Thor Han Eredin or anybody else. And for me, um, so many different types of being would come. And one of the beings was a man. And he used to come through the wall, same place in the wall. And remember in the 60s and 70s, men in Britain and Europe, because Europe is a collection of countries like Italy, France, Germany, Switzerland. You wouldn't believe how many people don't know that. Because
Oh, wow.
it's really sad because they've not been educated on purpose. Because the education system is just making us all dumb. It's not
Mm.
giving us a proper education. That's the plan, obviously, to devolve. Anyway. So yeah, so the men would wear like flat caps and suit
Yeah.
jackets, but raggedy and a shirt and a tie, but messy and trampy looking. And so this man looked like that, and he'd come through the wall, and it was the most terrifying, terrifying, terrifying thing. He was a physical man, and he would put his hand on me, touch.
Oh,
I'd be under the covers like you, and I could feel him.
yeah.
And then sometimes he'd bring a sack, and in the sack, I knew there were little black puppies in that sack, and he was going to drown them. And he would bring the sack, and they'd be wriggling about, and I'm looking at him like I'm looking at you, and I would know telepathically he's going to drown the puppies. And
Mm.
sometimes he would drop the sack on my back or on my stomach as I'm under the covers. And the physical part was more scary than seeing him standing there. It was terrifying. Then he would just walk through the wall. Okay. And other things, so many other things that happened. But how I finally got rid of him was one day around 11, 12. The body changes, your energy changes, you're starting to develop your breasts, you're starting to get your periods if you're a real girl. And you are on a different energetic wavelength.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
it just seemed that he didn't come anymore until years later. I was in America in my early 30s and I couldn't sleep and I was up reading the Da Vinci Code when it first came out.
Mhm.
And it's like 2 in the morning in a different country, in a different house. And he came through the wall, physically through the wall. And I screamed blue bloody murder, rage and violence at him. And I threw my book at him. And I was ready to get out and smash his face in because I'd had so many years of torment and torture from this man, this spirit man that was completely solid looking. And when I abused him with my mouth, to get him away, he kind of slumped and he looked like a pathetic, sad old man. And just for a second, I had a flash of compassion. And then he just turned around and started walking slowly back through the wall, just, re-exiting. And I realized, oh my God, that's me. That was me from another lifetime. That was me as an earthbound wandering. I didn't go to the light. I didn't want to be judged. I've been wandering and wandering because I was too scared for being judged. And part of me needed forgiveness or redemption. And I was able to give it to myself as that old man. And this is another funny thing. It's unbelievable to me how many people think they are this and that and this and that is great Alexander the Great, Cleopatra,
Oh.
Jesus Christ, Archangel Michael. They're never a little shithead or a gobshite that did wrong. And I remember a past life when I was a 4-year-old little girl trying to sell matches in London, dying on the freezing ice cold
Oh.
pavement and people stepping over me. I wasn't Queen Victoria.
Mm.
So people, they need to rein in the ego and always put projecting on a big famous person because 99% probably weren't that. But anyway, it all bleeds into our conversation today. But I wanted to share that earthbound experience because he was a dark entity. He
Mm.
was in spirit form, but he was still able to do physical things like drop a bag of puppies on my back, right? Terrifying.
That is very terrifying. And it is difficult because not only do we bring those that are around that are sniffing us out, and there's a lot of them that will sniff you out, but also we're bringing those entities that had been with us from past lives. And that's something I think that was quite interesting to me, when I was getting sort of 20s and 30s. I kind of started realizing that there were entities there that had caused all sorts of havoc in my life before. And they were back and they were starting all of their nonsense and they were trying to do things that, just day to day things that would just irritate the hell out of everyone. And you were just thinking, well, now where did my keys go? Well, yeah, they were there and they were hiding the keys. So they can do things that are physical. And they would do unusual things, like they would hide my books or hide my glasses or do very, very silly things. And I did notice that when I got a bit older and I was able to start with my horses, because the horses when I was growing up, they were like the key go-to. I used to be with the horses and that was it. And when I was with the horses, the handler and everybody else would leave me alone because they couldn't do anything at the stables and they definitely couldn't do anything with all these hundreds of other kids that were busy learning to be with horses and things like that. So it was a safe place. They left me alone. But then as I obviously moved on and I moved away from them, I continued with the horses. But the interesting thing was I was very interested in Appaloosa horses, so the spotty horses. And I was also very, very drawn to one of my past life horses, which was the American paint horse. So it's either black and white or it's brown and white or it's whatever. And they would always sort of snort and they could see when things were walking with me and they would like oh, and you could see and the nostrils would flare and they would go to the side or they'd go to the back of the stable. And I used to think, well, why is this lovely mare having a snotty reaction to me? And then I realized, hang on, wait a minute, there's something here, and that's what she's referring to. So it was very interesting and to see that those particular horses would see either tribesmen or individuals that were part and parcel of whatever was happening from a past life. So I had to do some shadow work on myself to work out what was it, what time period did it come from, who was it, what was happening and why. And then I had to start making peace with them so that my horses wouldn't react to them anymore.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Again, we've come out of this kind of long term, people call it new age. Number one, there's nothing new about the age. Okay. It's a made up psyop to get you mocked, isolated, shamed, oh, that thing you made. And
Mm.
any of the heads of any of the churches that postulate that crystals are evil and tarot cards are evil, everything and anything, my phone could be evil. This pen could be evil. This is the reality. My new puppet. Hang on. Hello. Lola. Elena Denan bought her for me. She said, Danny, I've got you a new assistant. I'm like, hi there.
Oh, that is gorgeous. Oh, yes, I love it. With lipstick. Oh my,
I
she's
just
beautiful.
mean, my point is that we can focus on anything and it can be evil. It's about intention, and again, the people that say, oh, crystals, I'm like, oh my God, do you know anything about the body you're in? Or do you have to sell that and give that to Jesus too? Not mocking Jesus. I love me a bit of Jesus, but I'm not a Christian and I don't follow the strict rules. Doesn't suit me. I'm allowed, you're allowed, we're allowed to think. And these poor women who are repressed and put in, the black hijabs in the burning sun, like, dude, think these things have got to change. And that's recent. That's only the last kind of 50 years they've been put through that suffering before they were, allowed to be free and wear what they wanted. And there's just so much anger and violence and repression. I wonder how many demons they've all got walking along with them. But you can't say that to a religious person. Oh no, because they think they're above it all, really. Have you checked? Let's see them walking through, a corral group of horses and how many kind of, trigger and
Mm.
respond to the attachments and entities they've got. And the people that assume that they've, they don't have attachments. You're the ones I'm the most nervous of because you've obviously never done any work. You know, people that postulate and claim, right?
Yes, absolutely. And shadow work is the most important work that you will ever do on yourself, on your soul, on your very being. The shadow work is the most important thing that you would do, because once you start clearing that, there's the space then for all these other beautiful energies to come in. But while you're all blocked up, there's nothing else that can come in, because it's all full up with whatever it is that you need to do the work on and clear. So yeah, start doing the shadow work. It's time.
Definitely is time. We mentioned earlier before we started, while we're doing shadow work conversation, how many people are deciding that channeling is a really good thing. And it's become very popular because a lot of the demonics, the
Mm.
demons on the high principalities, now that the people they were running and using their bodies, like Diddy's a good example of
Yep.
a host body that allows other demonic entities to enter him and then get his rocks off in certain ways. Pedos sometimes also have the demons come in and, you know, the physical body. It's just awful. It's just absolutely awful, the things that happen. But so channeling has become very popular because a lot of these people now are either dead or they're being judged or they're finding Jesus or they're changing. And so now there's all these demonics looking for the next plug-in, for the next body, you know, and people need to be very, very careful of this channeling. And so I mentioned to you this dumb banana brain woman.
Yeah.
I am having another pop. Yes, I am. And she made a show with Dr. Sala. I'm not watching it. I've got no idea what the bird has said because it's all bollocks. I'm not watching it because it's going to wind me up and then I'm gonna have something to say more than what I'm saying now. And I don't want to get dragged into the darkness, all
Mm.
attached to her and around that situation, because every friendship on the front line is being attacked, is being defamed, is being tarred and feathered. And oi, you little monghead, enjoy your little victories, enjoy them, enjoy them. Enjoy your small victories. I hope you feel good. Remember, what goes out comes back. So you have at it. But anyway, so this woman is pretending to channel a human being. And the human being, his name is Jor-El. He's admiral on a ship, and he's a person. Okay. And this woman who says she's a doctor, whatever, when are we going to get past academic snobbery? Who cares how qualified you are? Are you a good person? Are you an honest person? There's two of the highest degrees of judgment ever. Okay, be that, be that. Anyway, so she's pretending to channel in her body Jor-El, and she's like a regular, you know, they put them in the basket of New Age, you know, the foolish people. Welcome, dear ones. We are so happy to be here today. You are doing very well. We are very proud of you. Hang
Oh,
on. Here comes some light language. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, there's only one person out there whose light language I trust, and that is Andrea Fact. She's been doing it long, 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 long time. That has also become a trend, the light language. We got to be careful. What are you doing? Where is it coming from? Is it real? Where's the plug-in point? All of this, we've got to ascertain it. So anyway, so this chick is pretending to talk to Joel. And my point is, Beverly Rhodes, in your great long-term experience, is it possible for a human woman to channel a human man?
no, that's absolutely not possible. You just have to look at the frequencies and look at where is the sacred point of power? Where is the wave that's coming through? And how are you moving that information into your mind? It's not possible to send out a wave at a high speed wave as a human being, particularly one that's located far away. It's not possible in any way that I can see to channel or receive direct downloads from somebody who is human. It would be a conversation or it would be a transmission, but it would not be a channeling. You can't push that another human being into your body. That would be a big no-no. It would have to be something that is perhaps partially human, which is possible, then only the part that's not human would then go into the channel, the person that's the receptacle that's receiving. But as you're saying, the person is a human being on a craft who is managing, a fleet of beautiful vehicles. It's unlikely that it's just unlikely that he would create a vessel and an energy spike that would be picked up by somebody. But then I would look at it even further and think, well, if he was doing that, why would he go to somebody that he doesn't know? Why wouldn't he go to somebody that he already knows and has a trust bond with? For me, no, I'm sorry, it's a no for me. Nah, 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 nah.
Yeah, exactly. It's another person trying to copy and be Elena Danan. Of course, she rattles the cages of the masses in the arena or the field of galactic disclosure. There are so many people that want to become someone. Why they would ever choose that is beyond me because it's such a hard journey being on the front line. And Elena Danan is mercilessly attacked by these people with no basis, no knowledge, no experience whatsoever. And those that come forward and attack show their lack of experience. And if I hadn't seen these things or these people myself, all I would have to go on is Elena's story or wanting to believe her as my friend. But I've actually physically seen what she sees too. In most regards. And so that's why I really do defend her publicly and continue to. And it's very disappointing that the Galactic Federation of Worlds is you know being kicked around. And again, I'm not watching any of the shit people are making. Even friends of mine that we're on pause. I'm not watching it. It's just
Good.
going to wind me up because the Galactic Federation of Worlds have done so much to support this planet, so much to help this planet. They have intervened so many times, more than people will ever know. Soldiers, good men and women that work with the Galactic Federation of Worlds have literally lost their lives
Yeah.
in service to this planet. And when people ignorantly criticize and slander, I just lose all respect and, of course, speak out because that's my duty here is to bring truth to light and defend truth. And that's what I do. And it's so great because I run the greatest conference in disclosure in the world, as you know. It
Yeah.
attracts the brightest, most beautiful people. You were in that audience a few weeks ago, less than 1 month ago.
Yes.
Tell me what it felt like to be in a room full of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people with that love resonance.
Well, it was wonderful. And I was speaking about waves before, and really in your conference and all of the wonderful people that join it, I never met one person that wasn't high vibing and that didn't have an amazing understanding. I didn't realize there were so many people that would understand what we were talking about, what you were talking about, what all the speakers were talking about, and also maintain a lovely level of light, compassion, and learning. They were all learning and understanding, and oh, I didn't know that, and wow, I didn't know that. And you could just see. And what was even better was when the Bob Marley songs came on, and everybody started dancing. And actually, I said to Zara Marley, I said to her, "Look, people are dancing at your dad's energetic songs." And she was reduced to tears. She's so lovely, and everybody was joining. I felt that there was a joining of the light. There was a joining to defend the light, and I thought that that was absolutely amazing. And it was on every single day. And it even went out of the building and went as far back to the hotel, which was around the corner. And everybody was sort of there having their cups of tea and chatting and the breakfast and that. And it was there too. There was all of this energy, and everybody was coming from the same space. And you and your crew and everyone and the speakers, you are the ones that managed to facilitate that. You are the ones that bring about the light and also bring about the craft and those in the sky. That is incredible. Sunday, everybody was just vibing. Awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. And when someone falls out with a friend, let's say,
Mm,
and it's through no fault of their own, other people influence and now, something happens. and it may come back around, it may not. But humans, we're very inclined to say, "Oh, they're so low vibe. Oh, their vibe's lower than mine." That's not necessarily the case. It's the case that everyone's on a different journey.
Yeah.
Everyone's healing at different times, and so all of our friendships and connections are under threat. And those of us that haven't done the work, haven't done the shadow work, haven't accepted that we might have entities from this lifetime, from other lifetimes,
Mhm.
and because we haven't looked at our energy frequency or aura, whatever you want to call it, that, it just admitting that we've been wrong, we are wrong, we get things wrong, admitting that we don't know everything, admitting that there are people younger than us with less experience that we assume that actually have more information in an area that we possibly don't. So it's always kind of, and if you're wrong, apologize. If you're wrong, say you're wrong, apologize. Be
Yes.
grown up, because that really
Yes.
helps to dissolve a lot of kind of friction issues with people. But yeah, there's so many different ways to go on this subject. And but yeah, the Galactic Spiritual Informers conferences definitely bring the best people together, the best information together. And every year I bring more and more, new speakers. I up level, up level, up level. I mean, just the consciousness of people is up leveling. So it's all up leveling. And as you know, I've got Kathy O'Brien this year. Who survived the White House and the Pentagon. She was a sex mule and a drug mule. She was a sex slave, a CIA programmed MK Ultra program slave. Her information is absolutely just mind blowing, and she's very good. She's like the other ladies, like you too, that I've interviewed: Max Lowe and Gloria Masters, Rachel Vaughan, Jeanette Archer. Um, Gosh, all these women who've gone through horrific satanic aggressions as little girls. You're all doing healing work. You all are in a healing, line of work. All of you, not one of you isn't. I just find that so beautiful and mind blowing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're trying really hard to particularly get into the nub of the issues. With the healing work that I'm doing now with individuals, I look for and go into the energetics and the areas of the toroidal field or the aura to go and find where that very first ball of energy has been lodged, because that's where it starts, and go into that and then start moving it out and extracting it. And then we clear that and cleanse it and close it. We close the area or the little piece of slice of the toroidal field where you pull it out. We close that so that it can't go back in. And this is when we see then unbelievable levels of healing that start, so that you cannot return back to that memory because it's now gone. It's been extracted. It's been cleansed, cleared, closed, and then sent back up to the Akashic record, so that it cannot actually cause any further harm to you. And this is something that I've been doing now for, oh, it must be about 40 years. And it is the single most important area, is to be able to remove the original horrific memories. Because once they are gone and they have no more control of you, they have no more power of you. So once they're gone, they're gone. Then you can start moving on.
Yeah, yeah. People and the Akashic records, as you mentioned, or the Akash, as
Mm.
forget that bloke's name, Cryon. I used to watch him years ago, bringing information. And people are two at a time, I think. Sometimes they come back around, sometimes they never leave. Sometimes people just need to be in that energy for 10, 15 years. And him and Carol, was it Lee Tober and I can't remember, but years ago, with the whole Doreen Virtue, Wayne Dyer, Tony Robbins, all that kind of crowd, that genre, these people, Lee Carroll and Jan Tober, that's it. It just came back to me. They were names, the names you would see. And
At the time, yeah.
yeah. And now we're in this whole 2025, just before moving forward, of names, that people will remember: Elena Danaan, Tony Rodriguez, JP, moving forward in the galactic space. But these are really good people. They're not grifting. They're not they obviously have to, if they're going to dedicate themselves to a mission, which they do, they need to make money. Of course, we all do. We need to eat. Don't be so ridiculous. People then throw the Jesus card in. Well, Jesus was sweet and meek. Oh, shut up, Lily. Doris, Jackie, Michael, sit down. Oh God, I'm saying all the wrong names are just coming out. They're just random names coming out. But yeah, it's so ridiculous. And oh dear, people that make me laugh. But they're projecting their own unhealed rage, their own shadow selves, their own undone work, onto something that potentially is shining a light in them. Let's move to the principalities. I'll quickly give a brief share of my knowledge, and then please, we'd like you to bring yours. So, the demonic principalities, if you could imagine the tallest tower in the world going up and up and up, off planet, and all it is made of is dark, dark demonic entities that look like some of the most ancient ones you've seen, some you couldn't even imagine, some look like black bulls. They look like everything. And they're all on top of each other. And there's a constant violent, non-stop, violent, evil darkness. And all they're doing is trying to get to the top, the top, the top, because they're all fighting non-stop for the top space. They do the worst things on the way up to each other. There's no compassion, there's no feeling, there's no love. There's violence and terror and fight. And I have had contact with, unfortunately, one that sat at the very helm of a principality of demonics. And that was very gnarly. That was a very gnarly experience. So, anyway, over to you. Give us your insight into these arenas, please.
Yeah, I agree with you that there are, as you say, the layers and the principalities, and you've got different legions that are run by different core beings that sometimes are called dukes. I'm sure everyone would have heard them being called various dukes, but they have a particular specialism, which is they've got specialists in particular areas. They have those that are sexually driven. They've got those that are financially driven. They have those that are driven by both lust and also by vanity. So when you talk about, all the seven illustrial sins, so greed, lust, etc., etc., they all form part of those particular areas. But the higher you go, the more difficult they are to clear. They usually, it takes us, there's about five of us. I run teams of demon hunters across the world. And there's one in Australia, and there's quite a few across all of America, and there's others in Germany and other areas. And we all work together. And when we find that we get one of these Duke levels, not them themselves, but those that work for them, the legions that are underneath them, it will take at least six of us to be able to hold that light, that cage of light. And I give them a choice. And usually they're just swearing and effing and blinding and coming back to us, and they won't be able to do this, etc. But the nice thing about that is we hold all the corners, so north, south, west, east, and then up and down. That's why there's six of us. And when we've given them the final command and they say, not going to do this, it's wonderful because Archangel Michael comes in and he just goes, and he just touches them, and that's it. They turn to dust. And that's the end of them. They're gone. So yes, as many as there are, we are able still to clear them and remove them and enable the person then to be free of that. It takes about 3-4 weeks for them to realize that they're freed, that their body is their own body, their soul and their mind, everything is their own, and they can start then planning their lives going forward. But up until that, these principalities, they're different types, and you can usually see if somebody has got one of the principalities or one of the duke legions. If you just look at the way they are. So if you look at that person, and that person is totally money driven, totally only focused on that will do anything for money, that's usually one of the financial ones. If it is somebody that's only focused on self pleasure, gratification, etc., usually, and then has multiple partners and does all sorts of weird and wonderful things for years and years and years, usually you'll kind of know, yeah, that must be one of the ones that is the lustful legions. So it's very easy to spot them. It's very easy to see what types you might be dealing with. And then there's some that are particularly low, what I would call the lower types, the lower echelons. They don't really cause much, they just run interference. So you'll have things like, if you've got to get somewhere and you need to get there quickly, they'll cause a blowout on your tire, or that you can't find your keys, or you put the wrong gas in your car, you put diesel in instead of petrol, and then you end up with having to call someone out to sort your car out. It's the running the interference, but they can also be removed at the same time too.
So many things come to mind here. The demonic, the ancient demon that I'm referring to, that I had a run-in with some years ago, there were so many things about it that alerted me to the fact that this was a different entity, that I'd, come across so many different levels of them.
Mm.
There's absolutely nothing cool about it. I mean, it's awful. It is a horrible, horrible thing. The fact that I have all this knowledge and experience, I don't get a sense of pride, but I have a duty to share,
Yeah.
because other people deserve to know kind of what signs. And when I encountered this ancient demonic, because their spirits are huge, but
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they are.
they can take on a physical form. And well, here's what happened. So I'm in my house in Hawaii, and I went to bed, and I've been feeling odd all day. I'm feeling there's all weird shit happening in this house all the time. From the moment I moved in, the second I moved in, I was in between having a nap from jet lagged, coming from England to Hawaii. And I was just laying in the bed, like in between sleep, and I felt something sit down on the bed. And I was trying to like open my eyes. I'm like, I'm alone here. Like what? And I open my eyes, and there is a solid physical man sitting on my bed. And I thought it was my Jeff who died, my fiance who died.
Mm.
And because I'm in between sleep and jet lag, I put my hand out to touch his giant arm, because Jeff had massive muscles. He was a really huge guy. And I touched it, and it was dead. It was cold flesh.
Mm.
At the same nanosecond that I physically touched this thing, I realized it didn't have a face, Bev. It
Oh,
had hair, but it had a big gap here where there was nothing. And what it was trying to do, it was trying to access my memory and
yeah, get the Jeff. Yeah, get the Jeff. Oh, yeah, they do that, aren't they? Horrible.
it's awful. And I'd never experienced that. I'd never read about it, seen about it, heard about it, watched a film on it. I don't need to. And this is why I get so passionate about things I know are real, because especially if I've experienced them, you can shove it, Doris. This is what I saw. This is the reality. This is what they do. That was the first time I encountered it. Anyway, it got worse and worse and worse and worse, and it wanted me out of that house. Anyway,
Oh.
long story short, one night feeling odd, so many things had gone wrong. And, a friend of mine around the time also, things were always going wrong. The worst things were always happening. And this is what the demonics do. They make your life hell, one hell thing after another. And long story short, I went up to my beautiful bedroom, and there's a ton of black flies around the bathroom.
Oh.
There's no way they should be there. Number one, when I do a house or land or home clearing or burial ground clearing or whatever it is I do, and if I do a burial ground clearing, I'm taking a team. Don't go ahead, guys, and think you can do it on your own. You
No, you can't.
Jesus,
No.
people, let's start an investigation company. Let's be paranormal experts. Be very careful. Anyway, I saw the flies. I'm like, oh God, because normally flies would come after I've cleared out the darkness, the evil, done the blessing, brought the angels, brought the lights, said the holy prayers, sprayed the holy water, whatever it is that I do and the events when I do them. And it disturbed me greatly that there were all these flies. I thought, I don't know how many I can kill. There might be a couple that land on me in the night. So I went downstairs to our gigantic living room. And our gigantic sofa was in the middle of the living room. It was a huge, huge, huge long room. Plenty of space either side of the sofa. I laid down and went to sleep and then woke up to this stench of death,
Mm.
death, death, death all around me. And whatever this demonic was, it had taken on the form of a giant black, hairy, furry bull. And it was leaning on the back of the sofa, pressing against me through the sofa, going, "Mm." Did you hear that? Just in my little mic.
Oh, yeah, it's the breathing. Oh,
Yeah,
Lord. So it was breathing on you.
yeah,
So
it
in the breath that carry in the breath that carries the instructions. Oh, Lordy Lord.
it couldn't physically touch me, but it was pressing on the sofa trying to scare me. So, in true Danny style, because I've had such awful violence and trauma in my life from beings like this, I laid there and I went, oh, fuck off.
Good for you.
And that's what you do. Because had I let my frequency engage and spike in fear and terror, it
Wow.
can plug into my energy. And then it's got me further and got me more and got me further. So you don't, guys. You don't show a single second of fear. You go into neutral mode. You don't engage in emotion. You don't engage in negotiation.
Mm.
And anyway, I just went back to sleep
Good for you, girl.
with it in the room on the other side of the, what, 10-inch back of the sofa.
Yeah.
It woke me again,
Oh,
leaning harder, trying to be more scary. And I just laughed that time.
good.
It had no power, but it was a very ancient, and we had someone look at it off planet, somebody off planet look at this entity, and that person told us, me and my friend, that it was a severely ancient at the top of a demonic principality realm, and it
Mm.
meant business, but and then this person could have taken it out, but then it would have unleashed all the others on it, to us to cause more kind of pain. So but it's just so fascinating, like, and again, it's not a cool thing to brag, I'm not bragging at all. It's none of it. I wish I'd never had any of this experience, honestly, sometimes,
Mm.
because it really does, take its toll. And then when you share with people who aren't healed and really just want to hate you for anything you say, you sometimes you have to defend the information. But now I just like put it out, have it, listen to it. I hope it helps you. If not, walk on, move
Exactly.
along. Yeah.
Good thing is that you laughed at it because if when you hear the tinkling sounds of laughter, and we all love the sounds of little children playing and having playing and enjoying themselves, playing ball or playing in a blow up swimming pool. That energy is so high. When you laugh at them, that they cannot diffuse it. It actually diffuses them because that energy is so high because laughter comes from this area's solar plexus moves up into the heart chakra point, and as you know, the heart chakra goes out for miles and miles or kilometers and kilometers. That scoops up, and as it comes out of your mouth, that ha ha ha, that energy goes out and it cannot diffuse that, it doesn't know what to do with it. So it will hop it will just it'll get it off down the road, beetle off.
Yeah, yeah, it's so great, and that's why that the babies and I didn't send it to you. I sent it to a couple of other people today. The funniest, I mean, just absolutely funny. I don't know whether it's Snapchat, but there's an app, and the faces when the person looks in the phone, their face is so ugly and distorted, and those things make me laugh so much. Anyway, there were parents doing. I shouldn't laugh doing it to their children.
Oh,
His poor children. Oh dear, oh dear. Anyway, that was one, but I really was going to make the point that there's nothing more beautiful than a child's laughter, a baby laughing. I mean, I watch those videos a lot. Those and a lot of horse videos I watch because they make me so happy.
they
And
do.
children laughing and or dog rescues or Asher House I started watching, just beautiful animal things. And again, the laughter, the joy that breaks, the into the
It
ether.
does. It does.
And then a lot of us, we use like the sounding forks, we use the singing bowls, the high
Mm,
pitch frequency.
yes.
The demons can't stand it. They cannot handle the high pitch.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's another reason why we use those tools, all the little Tibetan bells that you bash together.
Yes, got them, and they're great for that because you can actually see them going, oh, you can see them actually physically recoiling and thinking, oh my goodness, no, I don't like that one. Yeah, they don't like it. Or the crystal, those big, beautiful crystal sound bowls, they are amazing.
Oh yeah,
They don't like them at all.
yeah. Yeah, that's why they shut down again. All the churches took all the church bells away because those buildings are healing centers. They are
Mm.
sound bath technology centers. The wind would come through the somatic glass and create sound. And like I don't know how we see the Fibonacci sequence, the Fibonacci swell, the spiral, and we just move that through our bodies. And even in the hospitals, they'd have people out on sunbeds in the sunshine. And again, people are being more and more moved away from the
Mm.
the terraforming of our planet that the idiots at the top were trying to create, and they're still trying hard, but they're failing. But it's like, reorganizing the deck chairs on the Titanic, you know, the,
It is indeed. That's a great analogy. It is. But at least what we can do now is we've got a lot of new crop circles all over the place. And if what you can do is you can breathe in and suck in all that energy because all that energy is still there. And if you look at the middle of it, middle of that, even if it's just on on a picture, you can look at that energy and you can perceive the energy and pull it in and come into your body because they have left a print. Obviously, not those that are just artistic aspects that are made with a plank and some ropes and that, but those that are actually created for us to give us that energy. You can use that energy too. Every year they top us up and give us a few more. So use that energy.
I've seen a couple. In fact, this girl reached out and said, do I want to go hang with her and go and see the crop circles? Because now we're obviously in that kind of full season. And
Mm.
the two men that said, we made these with a plank and a rope and walking around and pushing down and definitely field art has become a big industry.
Mm.
Obviously, they completely copied the original crop circles and that are absolutely real. And then they like to confuse. They like to create some mathematical, tetrahedron in the field that's so mathematically advanced that it could only surely be ETs that did it. And it was like Jackie, John, and Millie down the road, at
Mm,
art
yeah,
school, and these things have been proven. But they're still trying to, debunk the origin story of, a crop
exactly.
circle and what that actually is. And it is and always has been a message. And people tend to look at just the flat image and not thinking about, as you just mentioned, the energy frequency,
Exactly.
5D frequency that is there, the invisible temples that are there for us to kind of absorb information. And for people that physically want to know the difference between a good one and a fake one, all you have to do is literally take the stalk that's been flattened down
Yeah.
and you'll see how it curves. And in the node of the plant, it is microwaved on the inside.
Mm.
And this is how we know that it's come from a very hot source that has laid down these beautiful patterns. I mean, there's so many easy ways to tell and confirm a fake crop circle to a real crop circle. And most of them tend to appear down near Silbury Hill, which I've climbed 7 times, the prehistoric hill. And I don't recommend anyone climb that hill because it's so steep. I mean, it's really, really, really steep. I was there with Andrea Fowkes a few months ago, and she at some point broke her ankle, and she didn't feel.
Oh.
Yeah, she's good. She healed it herself. Andrea healed it herself, her ankle herself. But the incline is so steep. You've got to really, because if you one slip, it's not going to be a good situation. So anyway,
Yeah, that would be me. I'd be rolling down and I'd be at the end, that's for sure. I did notice, in fact, 20 years ago when I was doing a lot of the crop circles, we actually measured. I mean, how sad are we? We measured the node, and the node was 3 millimeters on those when we walked into the field at the top with where nothing had happened. And then when we got into the center of the field, which is where they'd all of them been laid over the top of each other in like a plaited formation, we measured those nodes and those nodes. Some of them were 4, some of them were 5 millimeters. So it seems like those where they've had that energetic interference, they are actually just a little bit bigger, which I thought was quite interesting.
Oh, that's very interesting. Very interesting.
Strange, but we're on the ground. We're sort of the ground warriors of light, the ones that need to make sure that that message gets out there. Because at the end of the day, yes, listen to the message, but more importantly, go in and feel that energy for yourself, which is it's a fantastic energy when you walk through a crop circle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's beautiful. I used to live in a beautiful village called Lily years ago, and duck pond, cricket pitch, you name it, picture perfect. And out my back windows was just fields, and then these hills, three big hills. And one day I woke up and I looked out, and there was some kind of a crop circle, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And I grabbed my coffee and my ex-husband, and we went over there and we sat in it. I'm like, "Oh, I can't really feel anything." And people around me going, no, it's real, Danny, it's real. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. That the image was slightly off. It was kind of rough and ready in places. Anyway, the next morning, I woke up, looked out my window, and somebody had taken a car into the field next to it and driven out the words, Keith did that. So I was like, I couldn't feel it. Oh, it's so funny, so funny. Let's just I love how we're dancing around on so many different relevant subjects here,
Yeah.
as a means to share story, life experience, but also help give some education in certain levels
Mhm.
that others are maybe needing clarity on their own. That's why I write my books and you write your books, to share our stories and information and hope that somebody might recognize something they can then heal, or they go, oh my God, that happened to me, or it reminds them of things
Mm.
that happened. The mothers of darkness, we'll briefly touch what the mothers of darkness are. In the satanic occult, there are many different layers and principalities between physical human people. You could call them soulless psychopaths or sociopaths. It's really irrelevant. They could be part of the bloodline. Families, their ultimate goal is to not create at the end. They want to be uncreated, meaning that they're not planning, the higher depth satanics are not planning to meet God or to go to hell. They want to be at a point of complete non-existence because that is the complete opposite to creation. They want to eliminate God, the creator, in any way possible or imaginable. And so on this journey, there are different layers and levels of this huge global organization, this satanic organization, and those that work within it. One of the areas at the very top is, I believe it's five chosen mothers of darkness. They are the most heinous. They have been trained the hardest, the longest. They have been trained since they were tiny baby girls to fight and defend their lives. They are hand selected
Mm.
because of their bloodline. And these are things that I've learned from other people's information, and picked up over the years, that I'm sharing now. And then we also have areas of satanic brotherhood. Um, Woo! And we have names like the Pindar, the Phoenix, and these are things that people are welcome to go and investigate for themselves. But again, trying to give a level of understanding in the kind of hierarchical situations and stages, and bring into the awareness that the mothers of darkness are at the top, and they are also brides of Satan. And there's a whole ton of girls that sell their soul into that arena that also become brides of Satan. Beverli, share us your knowledge.
Well, I think that the mothers of darkness are key to understand them because yes, they are scooped up and they are selected, but they select internationally. They select far more than that which they would ever need. And the reason for that is very much the same as the vamps, the vampires. There's many that come forward and offer themselves and wish to transition. The mothers of darkness are the same. There are those that are suitable, that have the right bloodline, that are within those spaces, but not all of them survive the unbelievable, torturous training that they have to go through. Not all of them survive to the level that they would be able to birth a demon. That takes some time. And some of them don't make it because they only need five, but they select, I think, probably in the region of about 30 worldwide. And this is where I was discussing the lot in our last discussion, where we were discussing about the differences between those that are created and those the demons that are birthed. The two different things. And the mothers of darkness are the ones that are able to, through a selected seed, they are then able to birth a demon. And that was where I was talking about the bath and then the dripping of particular essences of whichever type of individuals they've decided to put on meat hooks above the bath. And at various specific times, that whole ritual that happens, one of those mothers of darkness would then be in the bath filled with the essences that would then create that essence of a demon which could be birthed, that comes into the body and then is expelled and given birth to a few months later. This is what they are chosen for, and they are chosen to create either legions or dukes or replace a duke or provide a particular level of demon that can get into areas that have been chosen. So, for instance, you might find one of them that has been birthed many years ago is now in a position of extreme power in the government. So that would be that particular male person who has been birthed. And even these women are also in positions of power too. But this is their sole purpose. They also run very, very large organizations, and they also run across the world. They run very specific groups that do, and she would preside upon changings of children. So they would make sure that the children become what they need them to become, so that they can pull on those strings. It's all about puppetry, is making sure, oh, I've got X amount of people in that area, I've got X amount of people in that area. This is the goal, this is what we want. This is what I'm going to be doing. And these are the legions. They're called legions for a reason, because they follow blindly. They will do as they're told.
Yeah. Some of the mothers of darkness also have been, I've been told, well, I have been brought to this information by watching somebody on the internet, what I'm going to share now, this part. And it is claimed that one or two of the mothers of darkness live very plain, boring little lives, just like little old ladies. You would never imagine for a moment that they are who they are. They have done the things they've done and do. They are capable of atrocities that you wouldn't even imagine. That's why one of my recent conferences, one of my recent Galactic Spiritual Informer conferences, I did a presentation and I said, don't trust those old ladies. It's the old ladies, because you just never know. And the saying is, you'd never know it's them, and they live their lives that way, but they are physically meeting Satan, physically meeting Satan. That's clearly the payoff at that level too. So it's not to be underestimated.
Mm.
And again, anybody who would want to, engage, but you can understand if we take Hollywood for a moment, and I do hope my Zoom is working, because I remember last week I was just like stuck frozen on the screen. We could hear your lovely voice, but we couldn't see your beautiful face.
No, couldn't see anything. It was, yeah. So no flies have, jumped onto the screen this
No,
time to
no,
cause
quite, no.
interference, horrible things.
No, but okay, what was I just saying there? Because
Talking about Hollywood, Hollywood.
Hollywood. So if we look at one aspect of people that can't believe how they got involved in something, to be caught up, let's say in, let's audition for a movie in Hollywood, because we are programmed and hypnotized with how great it would be to be an actor in Hollywood, and look at the money and the sex and the drugs and all of that. And people are so plugged into that from little tiny kids. Once they've got their phones and their gadgets and their iPads, they are plugged into that driving force. So then there we are, 21 years old, beautiful girl, dressed up for the night, wants to be a star, and gets invited to a party. Of course, she's going to go. Has a couple of drinks, somebody pops a pill in her drink, or she takes the pill because she's feeling adventurous. And this is what you do in Hollywood. And then all of a sudden, they're at a party with a lot of rooms, and the rooms are different colored rooms. And they're
Mm-hmm.
not allowed
Rainbow
once,
rooms.
yeah. So do you
Mm.
want to, and then suddenly they're in it and they don't realize how dangerous that is because when you're in, you're not getting out. And so would you like to share some of the information you have on the rainbow rooms?
Yeah, the rainbow rooms is quite interesting because when you get to the rainbow rooms, there's a lot of choices that you need to make, and each of the rooms are the colors of the rainbow. The last color, though, which is the final room that you get to, which is the debasing room where it's red. And the final room is where you make that final decision. Yes, I will do anything for this fame. I will do anything that is necessary to ensure that I stay as famous as I need to be. And in that room, the red room, there is a lot of different types of, shall we say, tests that you need to go through. But the most important one is that it's the shame test. They will shame you, they will debase you, and they will make you feel that you are worth nothing and absolutely worthless. And that is the final test is will you allow yourself to become a nothing so that they can build you up in the red room. And there's a lot of celebrities that are fully aware of the rainbow rooms. They know exactly what they've been through, but because they've been sworn to secrecy, they won't discuss what their particular initiation or their particular task was to do in the final room, which is the red room. And most individuals have then got that sigil or that sign on them that they have been through the rainbow rooms and survived the rainbow rooms because they're owned and they're owned for life.
They're owned for life. Yeah, and I know there are people who have literally faked their own physical demise in order to come away from under the umbrella, which is the Illuminati, is it not?
It will be, but it's even some of them are even higher than the Illuminati. There is one or two steps that are above that. It goes to such a heightened level of control that is being broken down now piece by piece. And the Illuminati don't have the level of control that they need because some of the big powerful creatures or individuals that used to be here, that used to be on this planet, are not here anymore. They've actually moved off the planet. So we've just got one or two really big players that need to be removed. And once those two big players, particularly in royalty, a male person, that is removed, and once he and his spouse is moved sideways and he leaves and exits the planet, I think things will change a great deal because his son is not of the same energetic value because of who his mother was.
Very interesting. And again, as you know, because we both live in England, when you go near the royal family, like there was a member in my family who, when the Queen died, this person was bereft. You would have thought her own grandmother died. But
Oh,
because and people in, America, other countries that don't have royalty, they're not raised the same way that we are. It's
yeah.
not the natural kind of DNA day-to-day life to witness these children being born and this king and this queen and these princes and princesses, and it's part of our life, part of our
Mm,
culture. I mean, I
mm.
don't give a shit about it, obviously.
Yeah, me neither.
you know, I yesterday I interviewed my friend Gloria Masters and her
Um,
partner Scott Beard. They're doing such great work on rescuing children, putting out the hand signal, a child
mm,
or a person being trafficked. So obviously I always bring people like this on my channel because that's my job. And we're chatting away, and they were talking about the child protection services. And I said, in this country, the person that used to be in charge of child protection services and screwed that up, and so many kids went missing on his watch.
yeah.
Now the president, now the prime minister, you couldn't make it up. That level of stupid. But you see how the dark work. They keep elevating the biggest losers in the world that in our eyes are bad people, but they just keep giving them, oh, well done, well done. You took a few kids out there, got them lost in the system. It's absolute wickedness beyond wickedness. And then Scott was saying, well, we don't call it child protection services in New Zealand. We call it, and then he said a beautiful Kiwi, Maori word. I
Oh.
said, I love that. I love that an indigenous word,
Mm.
my ancient Maori in beloved New Zealand, is the word they use for child protective services. And so it should have always been that we don't eliminate and genocide our Indigenous brothers and sisters. And it made me so happy because New Zealand is very advanced in some ways and not so in others. But that you could say that single country. But anyway, I digress slightly, or do I? Let's see. Am I really digressing? I think not. Returning to the Hollywood, and how we are influenced. Everyone's influenced. So you got the older people that are stuck on the royal family. If you say a word about them, they dislike you intensely. You've got
Mm.
the younger generations desperate to be famous. They think that's a good thing until they get up against having to sell their soul, perform rituals, be trafficked around. And then let's just softly land on a current news story that we've both covered on different channels and with each other in private conversations. Um, Diddy.
Oh, yeah. The Diddy Meister.
No, I will tell you that when it comes to those disgusting, filthy smells, the death smells, the dirty
Mm.
sex smells, the abuse smells, when I look at that person, I that's what I get. I get that smell. Now I can't remember what level of we've got clairaudient, clear hearing, clairsentient, clear feeling, claircognizant, clear knowing, clairvoyant, clear seeing. Yeah, and other Claires. And I don't know what the one is, but I get shocked a lot when I'm watching something, let's say on TV or well, I only have YouTube on there, but and I'm entranced. I'm in a movie and suddenly I can smell the flowers I'm looking at. I can smell the cooking I'm looking at. I watched something in China yesterday and I could smell Chinese food and I thought, oh my God, it's so powerful. And it's not my imagination. There's no engagement in my imagination. I'm energetically there. And I
Mm.
think they're going to become more and more aware of their own ability. But with the dudder, when I look, I see the insidious ugliness that was on the inside, now on the outside. Despite what happened to him as a child, as an adult, he's made choices.
He has.
And I get the smell, the horrific smell. And now, of course, we're seeing the begging and the dealing and the negotiations for him to be released. What are your thoughts? And tell us what led you to the understandings you have about him and the people around him.
Mm. Well, when I actually remote viewed him when he was first put into the jail situation, and then he was moved across to the main prison that he's in. So I first had a look at him, and I was wondering who is he protected by? And then I realized when he turned around, because he turned around and he looked at me, and I thought, oh, okay, you've seen me. That's fine. I want to know whose protection are you under? And he turned his back to me, and there's a huge tattoo on his back of some deity that he swears allegiance to. So this is one of the darker forces that he allows himself to be protected by. But he was brought about with his shame. So red room, once again, red room shame. So this is the shame because he wasn't doing half of what he was meant to do. So this is his way of being shamed. His shame walking is with him having to change his name so many times that he's not allowed to use his real name anymore because that name is a shameful name. So every time you use the name Sean Combs, that carries a frequency of shame for him. So rather use that name because that just helps him to feel awful. But this is part of this. He is a warrior of darkness, as we get individuals that are warriors of light. He is not a warrior of light, he is a warrior of darkness. And part of what he's doing now is his payment, because he was only ever going to be in power as one of the kings for a certain period of time. And this is the end of his powerful cycle. If you have a look at him, you will see that his hair has turned completely white. All of the energetics has been drained out of him. He does not have that level of power that he used to have. And he at the moment is begging to be released so that he can have some of his life left. Because if he goes back into prison, he knows that the powers that be, as part of his punishment, will just leave him there to rot. So at the moment, the status quo is still a 50-50. There isn't sufficient 100% evidence without a shadow of a doubt that the prosecution have not given 100% proof of all of his, particularly his RICO charges. They're not all 100% yet. So I'm hoping over the next few days, maybe they'll come up with sufficient evidence that there is no shadow of a doubt, because that's the only way that they could possibly have him carry a sentence sufficient so that he could end up spending the rest of his life in prison. At the moment, those scales are still kind of doing this.
Yeah, so interesting. And when you look at someone like that, and of course we know we've seen videos of him beating the living daylights
Oh, yeah,
woman. And so when you've got that level of footage and proof, there's no way you can come back from that. You don't get to come back from that. You can't deny it. Nobody cares about your sorry. But when I refer to monsters like Bill Gates, let's say, or Anthony Fauci,
mm,
true heinous monsters. He's standing alongside him, slightly lower level, not as bright. I mean, I guess you could call them semi-bright, because they've managed to do certain things, just not on the back, not or necessarily just on the back of their parents' money and the bloodline money that comes to them. But there's an insidious, ugly man, talentless, and people went along lying. It's like the emperor's new clothes. He's a
yeah,
crap singer. He's shit. He's rubbish. And people just like, oh, this is so cool, man. No, you're under a spell.
yeah,
Recognize it. Now, Gene Deal, one of his former bodyguards, who sits, I watch him sometimes. He makes me laugh. He sits and he plays music and he's really excited about his broadcast, and he's building and he's doing well, and he enjoys himself. And he told a story, and I believe this story, that he watched one time Diddy going to a court situation, but on the way stopped off in Central Park. And he said to Gene Deal, stand there, wait there. And Gene Deal watched him walk across into the trees, and there was some kind of a man in robes in the trees. And the man did a ritual with Diddy. It involved a bird, it involved blood.
mm,
And then when the ritual was done, he walks into court, nothing was leveraged on him, no charges, and he came out. And I believe
yeah.
Gene Deal's story. He's
I
got
would believe it too. Yeah, it's basically a cloaking and invisibility spell. That's what that was. Very common, nothing special. And also, I mean, he's got Abramovich and others that do work for him too. So, that would have been probably one of hers, or could have even been her, fully cloaked. It's possible. So it's not anything unusual to have that level of ability to manipulate mass, to manipulate light, and to manipulate what people actually see. And that sounds to me like an invisibility spell. So they couldn't really touch him.
the elements that you raised there with the kind of invisibility spell, not, being an untouchable, I always find it sad, and I probably always will, like how sweet humans generally are. Like we're very sweet beings. Our instinct is to be kind, to be loving.
Yeah.
Most of us, this is the majority of
Of
humans.
course. Yeah.
And we want to help, and we want to believe everything. We want to not think the person in front of us is a liar, a faker, a harmer, a serial killer. We
Mm,
don't want to
mm.
think those things. And we often ignore the little signs we get instantly. And I was saying on another broadcast the other day, sometimes, and I've learned this the hard way, sometimes I'll meet someone and immediately there's something that I'm like, oh, I'm not sure about him or her. But that's an opportunity for me to be honest with myself, because we're mirrors for everybody. We're mirrors back and forth for everything and everybody. And sometimes I came to learn the hard way that sometimes I've met someone who's actually a really wonderful person, and they'd healed something up inside of themselves that I hadn't healed up inside of me because I was
Oh,
trying to avoid going into that pain. And so and the brain's amazing. The brain will really try and keep you safe as well. You know, it'll keep you going into the pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. It doesn't really want you to go into the pain. And that's why sometimes we've got no memory. It blanks out because the
yes,
brain's trying to
yes.
protect, protect, protect. And yeah, so I think it's important to preface that too, to say that it's sometimes we don't like somebody because there's something in us that needs looking at and owning. And, you know, I always say then don't go into victim or martyr mode. You know, we don't have to thrash ourselves. We want to come into the middle, which is balance. And in that balance position of emotion, then start the healing process, you know, and not look for the drama or the adrenal high or the phone
Mm.
calls for 3 hours and bore the arse off someone, you know.
Yeah, indeed.
Jesus. So in terms again of like Diddy and the people around him and those who are being named and the deals he's forced to do because he's got to take some, you know,
Responsibility. Yeah. Time to pay the piper, and he's not going to be too happy with doing that because where he is at the moment, being having the 5-star life that he used to have, he feels that he's paid enough. And that's what his energy is showing. He feels, and that's why he's left his hair white. He has this Farmer Joe Brown look. He's left it white because he said, well, what more do you want me to do? Well, actually, it's time to pay the piper, and they are expecting him to make some sort of a payment. It just depends now. Is that payment going to be a large payment or is that going to be a small payment? What is the payment going to be? And what will he? I think he still thinks that he can decide what his payment's going to be, but actually he can't. He doesn't know that yet.
you know, another area, say Illuminati, or you know, satanic bloodline families, satanics are different levels and layers. He's at the one of the lower levels. He's not, you know, he's not. He's one of the lower levels. Yeah, they're the ones that these are the ones that will tend to get involved in the more the violence, the harm to our babies, etc. They're lower levels, you know, less intelligent. Not that you can really measure intelligence in a heinous environment, but anyway. So the rewards aren't going to be there for him in the way that he thinks. And also, there is a misconception because, like, even in some mafia environments and structure and thinking, they will reward loyalty in a mafia environment to some regard.
Yeah.
But in the satanic environment, you know, doing deals with Satan, there's no loyalty.
No.
It's a farce. The promises that people have been made, they're never going to see those promises revealed. It's never going to happen. And a lot of them are finally realizing that. And now they're rats on a sinking ship at the highest levels. They're all turning on each other, sharing each other's secrets, you know, blowing each other up. And they knew it was going to come. And it's here now. We're seeing it. It's happening. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that those that are hiding in this country, I think they better be a little bit smarter about what they're doing and hiding on tractors in the middle of a farmyard. It's not really going to protect them too much. So yeah, there are a lot of folks that are going to be coming out of the woodwork. And I think that many of those individuals that decide that they used to be on one particular side, they're going to they're going to flip over and they will spill the beans, spill the tea, say what they need to say in order to protect their own skins, but also the skins of their own loved ones, because it's time for them to come out with what they need to if they want to continue living in the realms that they're living in.
I messaged Sean Atwood the other day,
Oh yeah.
just to check in there, and he wrote back and he said to me, "What do I think of Elon Musk and Trump at the moment?" I didn't get a chance to answer, and I wanted to think, I ponder what I truly think about this current situation. Um, so, can I ask you, and I'm happy to share my thoughts on it too, but can I ask you, what do you think is going on there?
I think that there is a power struggle because when you look at the energies of both men, they are particularly bright, they're particularly hyped, and they have their own aspects. They have a very high speed energy, but they also have a very strong sacred point of power within themselves. And they have very specific missions, but very different missions. And in my view, that's what's causing the power struggle between the two of them. Is they've got missions, they're very passionate about each of their own missions. They need to take those missions forward. But at this particular point, the missions are on two separate sides. They're not in alignment and they're not doing exactly the same thing. So it's like having two generals. One is being asked to go and sort that bit out, and another one's been asked to sort that one out, and actually they're in two totally different separate areas. I do think, though, that because they're both warriors, because they both have very key missions for all of us here on Gaia on Earth, they will eventually, once they've gone through the peacock posing pit and they've stopped this, they will eventually come around again and end up being together as friends, and they'll make up and play nicely. But both men are hurting right now.
Yeah. I think that part of this is um, puffed up, their peacocking, as I call it.
Yeah.
Uh, I think there is an element of truth in a disagreement, but I also think there's a pantomime aspect to this too. And
Yeah.
I think that the bond they made as two men who claim to want peace on earth and transparency and again you can imagine people yelling at the screen
Mm.
because what they chose is not the same, and I'm not choosing. I couldn't care less. you know
Mm.
I'm not in awe of any of these people. I'm not worshiping them. I don't celebrate them. I'm watching them. And how are they going to behave to my brothers and my sisters on my planet? That's
Yeah.
where I come from. So, it's not about a political bullshit fest as far as I'm concerned. But I do think that there is an element of reverse psychology happening, and there will be an element that gives people that think they've got a win now because these two have fallen out are going to show their hand, and there'll be more information to come forward. Because
Mm.
this is people, I was going to say it's a game of chess, and I just remembered that people often apply that thinking, that 5D chess to Trump. I think he gets given a bit too many accolades, and then people put their savior fantasy on him. He's not a savior, he's a man doing a job,
Yeah.
and needs to do it well, because there'll be consequences for him if he doesn't. And
Mm.
all this sayings wound me up for so many years when people saying, he's in charge of the military. No, he's not. He's not a bloody military man. Therefore, he's not in charge of the generals and the admirals. Of course he's not. Again, the people they read something and they take it as their own story, and it gets repeated and repeated and repeated, and it brings it energy, it brings it wings, and most of the time it's complete bollocks. You know,
Mm.
if he's in charge of the global military, I'm not okay with that, and I'm scared. People are just put the biggest pressure on others, don't they?
Do.
It's not true, and anyone with any military experience knows that. Knows that. Oh my goodness, and then oh well, like Trump. I don't care. I don't care. None of them are impressive. Just get a job done. Get it done.
Mm.
Get full disclosure done. Do it now. Upstairs and downstairs. Get it done now.
Mm.
So you see this situation resolving itself?
Yeah, I do think it will resolve itself because the two missions that both of the chaps are on are very specific. They need to have cohesion at some point, and once it for me it looks like that energy is a flushing out energy where they're trying, you're trying to flush individuals out of a particular area. Once they've done that and they've realized that they are able to not divide individuals, but understand what is the percentage of individuals that fall in that camp and which individuals fall in that camp. Once they've worked all of that out, they will find common ground once again. But this is tactical. And this is a tactic that was created not by Elon and not by Trump. This is a tactic that was created by a senior tactician, a strategic individual that understands what was necessary in order to flush out what is happening worldwide and to create a diversion. And I'm saying that it's a diversion because it is a diversion on the global stage. They're diverting everything away from what's coming in July, because July's energies, and I've spoken all over the place to individuals that are picking up the same energetics. There is a huge energy that's happening in July that is showing that the solar plexus, if you like, of Earth itself is changing, and that energy is changing to such a degree that if people generally start picking that up, people will start saying, well, actually, maybe I need to, stock up on food. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to do that. And this whole posturing that's happening between Trump and Elon is taking our focus off what is happening worldwide, what's happening out in the solar areas to the sun, the solar flares, what's happening with this magnetic speed and this change of all this energetics that's happening globally in the universal level. It's taking our focus off that because we're so busy worrying about these two men having their little silly little sandbox tiff that we're not looking to the stars. We're not looking at what actually is going on out there.
Yeah, so many distractions on
Mm,
multi levels. They throw things out. The media, throw things out that is going to hit like pretty much every demographic, every age, every country, something for them to talk about, argue about, look over here about, and don't really look at what's kind of going on in front of them. It's a long-term used tool, psychological tool, and it definitely works. So people better be kind of focusing more on their healing and less on the gossiping and,
mm,
less on the worshipping. And just in terms of worshipping, my best friend Elena Danan has come under such horrific abuse from people. I mean, the abuse that she's going through is so much worse. It's multi-layered. I'm just so disappointed in all the people out there, talking. I'm disappointed in them all because I know her extremely well. And if I don't care who she is, if she was doing any of the things that people are saying, she doesn't want people to worship her. That's so embarrassing. That is butt clenching, embarrassing. And if she really was that person, we would not be friends. I don't play with asshats like that. And that is absolutely not her. She's an extremely sweet person, extremely loving person. And she's not run of the mill. She has these certain ways about her. She's very different. She's very ethereal and she's very gentle and she's very loving. It's funny, she's in Japan at the moment, and she so fits that culture. She doesn't drink alcohol. She drinks tea, and it so fits her. Um,
mm,
and as a beautiful being who's so brave, braver than any man I ever met in my entire life, braver than any man I see out there on TV, on the news. I don't care who they are. She's so brave. And so people are turning, are attacking, are being abusive. And I'm saying, obviously, in defense of my beautiful friend, that you don't know her.
mm.
Stop gossiping about her. Basically, shut up. Leave her alone. You have absolutely no right to attack a beautiful woman that's brought so much true information to our planet. You don't know what you're talking about. You have zero example to give of your own experiences that couldn't even match hers. So yeah, so shut up. And I just think it's important to say that, and I've just said it. So we can move on to another subject. I know we've covered so many here today. I wonder, is there something that you would like to share in any regard of the subjects we've covered so far?
I think the one area that I want to cover is to start understanding where the planet is at, because the planet is actually a sentient being within itself, and she is reeling from the changes that are happening. She's changing as much as we are changing, and we live on their surface, and the other beings that live underneath the surface. So we've got a lot of changes. We've got earthquakes happening in all of our oceans at the moment. People are kind of blind to that, which I'm finding a bit strange, but yeah, they don't know about it. So yeah, there's loads of them. There's, up to the one a couple of days ago was a level, was a, on the Richter scale was a 9. we've got Guatemala, we've got other areas, we've got all sorts of things that are happening. Understand also that there's volcanic eruptions that are happening. We have them in Italy, we've got them all over the world. Everyone is seismologists are watching every volcano for just in case they decide to start going gurgly gurgly and start bubbling up. And this is Gaia telling us those energetics, I'm changing, I'm moving. Those solar winds, we've had solar winds that are huge solar winds at the last few days that has caused a disjoint between our consciousness and the consciousness of the galactic consciousness across universes. Those solar winds have been the highest that they've ever been. So those people that haven't been able to sleep, that have found themselves disjointed or discombobulated or having lots of arguments and fights and depression and having this rested sleep and having pressure on your chest and all these weird and wonderful things that are happening. Not that I'm a doctor, this is not a clinical diagnosis. Please go and see your doctor. But if you start feeling these unusual things, go and seek help, because this is Gaia. This is these energetics. Become a little more in tune. Become a little look up, look to the sides, understand what's happening with the world around you, because we do live on the surface of the planet. Become part of this planet, become active human beings.
Yeah. It's so beautiful that you mentioned that too, that, she's a sentient being. She feels everything. She's a living being. She's alive. She has physically moved in her own position in the solar system. We can prove that mathematically. We know that we as humans are engaged with the pulse of her own heartbeat. Some call that the human resonance. If we leave our planet, we're no longer plugged into that human resonance. And Elena Denan and JP, for example, confirm that when they're physically off planet,
Mm.
then they're looking, the heart panics for a moment, and it can actually take its toll physically. But she is going through beautiful changes, and we are being invited to do our healing, to get out of the 3D density, holding on to the pain, the agony, and the sorrow that we've all grown up from, and let that pain go so we can align to who we are supposed to be. Beautiful, loving, blessed beings. So brilliant. Well, I love hanging out with you, Beverly Rhodes. Beverly Rhodes, I think you're great.
Cheers, mate. I like hanging out with you too. We put the worlds to right. Why not?
A little go, don't we? We have a little go. And then I think some of the subjects that we've experienced, are just especially you, in certain areas are so shocking. They're not really expecting such a glamorous lady as yourself to,
Thank you so much.
come out with the vampires and demons and, cannibalism and things like that. But, these things we bring to impart information and hopefully
Mm.
add some value or information to help people. So, well, what would you like to say to the audience as we say tatty bye, my love?
As we say, tatty bye, what I would like to say is remember the children, be the difference. And if you can't do something nice to someone and positive to someone during your day, then do nothing at all. It's all about being positive. And if you can't brighten and bring down that positive energy, rather than, please don't give out the negative nonsense. It's horrible. And it turns into black goo and then you just look terrible. So just put out the positive. And if you can't do that, just work on yourself and be at peace.
Beautiful. Basically, everyone, don't be a feisty gobby cow like me.
Say that. I didn't like.
Oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, no, that's a good words to end on, definitely. And it's crazy with I got a fan on right now. It reminds me of
You're hot.
Costa Rica before I had air conditioning put in my house. But anyway, stay well out there, guys. It is so bumpy right now.
Mm.
Don't believe everything you hear. And if you hear something about someone that's unkind and mean, really, really, really check into it. Is it true? Like we're saying about some bird who's channeling a human, that's a lie. That's obvious. And listen to the story behind it. Where did this chick pop out from? Why is she all over someone who was in the public eye
Yeah.
for good things? You know what I mean? Just be careful where you get your information. Stop gossiping, stop sitting in groups, stop deflecting from your own internal pain and get some healing done because we're all worth it. Beverly Rhodes, I love you, darling. I'll see you next week.
Love you too. Have a lovely week. Thank you so much, Danny Henderson, as always.
My pleasure. And to you guys out there, I love you too, you buggers. I'll see you soon.
Bye.